Hello everyone, welcome to this Emperor's Path vlog. Today I'm going to be doing the part 2 section of my oil wagon tutorial. I've said it in a later part of the video, but I just want to say a massive thank you to Bunter's Yard for providing a tutorial for me to work from and to use parts of it that I really liked, and also for noticing that I did not have the ladders for these wagons and has 3D printed me some and sent them my way. So a massive thank you to that. I will put a link in the description below to his channel where you can get lots of very, very good weathering techniques, and they're extremely satisfying to watch if you like a dirty diesel. So yeah, so I'm gonna go into the video. I'm going to try and show you all of the airbrushing, but also it's a pain to film, so we'll see how we get on with that, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video. Thanks. Okay, so since we were last here looking at this particular project, I have made some changes. The bodies were black last time you saw them, or not the bodies, the actual tanker parts, and all I've done is I've gone over them with some Vallejo grey surface primer. And what I did was I did a voting contest, like a football kind of elimination thing. I can't remember what it's called, like a tournament on Instagram, where I got people to vote for the colours that they wanted, because the one thing I couldn't do was decide on what colour to paint these. So I put several colours out to Instagram, and after whittling down 8, we ended up with a final of blue, which I suggested this colour from Scale 75, which is the Mediterranean blue. Incidentally, this is the blue that I use for my Network Southeast blue. It's a lovely colour, beautiful to work with. And the Games Workshop Avalon Sunset, and as it happens, Avalon Sunset won. Avalon Sunset won. So yeah, so that's the colour that we're going to be painting these wagons, which I'm quite pleased about, because I wanted a light colour to work with, and the two colours that I didn't necessarily want to win, if I'm honest, were black and red. And the reason for that is because I find that black doesn't necessarily show up the grime as much as I want it to, and red, I find using red to try and show like the rust and stuff like that isn't as great, because it's a very similar colour, just with a little bit of yellow thrown in, whereas the yellow still makes it pop. But yeah, I put up white, grey, black, yellow, blue, green, red, and metallic. They were the 8 options that I put up there. So yeah, so yellow won. So I've done a grey prime over the top of these, and what I'll do in this video is I'm going to spray all of them yellow. I'll probably do that off camera, if you've used an airbrush before. If I do a particular recipe with some sporadic different coloured yellows on there, I will let you know. What I've also done with the wagon bases is, at this point it's worth mentioning a massive thank you to Bunter's Yard's YouTube channel / Instagram. I will leave a link down in the description below for all of his stuff. He actually saw the video, and for a couple of pennies he has sent me these ladders to go on the end of the wagons, because once you put the tops on, they didn't necessarily look as great because they were missing the ladders. So he's used his 3D printer and printed me some of these, so they'll be bunged on as well. Yeah, and then for the wagon beds, using his tutorial, I've painted a red stripe along here and a yellow dot in the wheel bit there, and I've done that on all of the wagon bases. I didn't need to, as he says in his tutorial, which I will link below, you don't necessarily need to go on thick and have it showing through loads, because it's going to get weathered so much anyway. So yeah, so I'm going to crack on with these. The bases aren't really going to be touched right now, it's just the wagon tops. So yeah, so I'm going to crack on with those. So I completely forgot to film this section. So I've been over the wagons and I've given them sporadic colours using yellow ochre, come on. Yeah, yellow ochre by Vallejo Model Air, Sol yellow by Scale 75, but the main colour's been this Avalanche Sunset. But yeah, and then what I've done is I've masked up a particular line on the wagons, and the reason for doing this is I'm going to just put a black stripe across it just to give it a little bit of colour variation, and I've got a plan for some transfers for these. I'm just waiting to hear back from some people, but yeah, I'm going to now airbrush these black stripes on here. So I'm going to speed the video up, and hopefully we'll be back with some nice jagged black stripes. Oh, before I forget, usually I would say to use proper modelling tape, such as this Model Craft stuff or the Tamiya masking tape when you're doing your models. However, with coaches, I'd say it's really necessary, but with wagons, because I want these to look really grubby and distressed and stuff, I'm not fussed about completely clean lines, and if they do bleed or anything like that on them. So I've done it with normal masking tape, A, to be quick, and B, because I do want it to have that sort of grubby, not looked after feel to it. Hello, welcome back. So I completely forgot to record some segments for this video, so my deepest apologies. I will try and explain everything as best as I can in between. If there's something that you feel that I've missed out, please leave a comment down below, let me know what it is, and I will try and fix that issue. So first thing, my friend Dib actually helped by 3D printing some additional buffers for some of these wagons for me. He has a collection of certain ones, and he had the ones that work on these Hornby wagons. So some of the ones that were missing buffers I was able to replace. So massive thank you, Dib. You can check out his YouTube channel at Dibs Shunting Layout, Dibs Shunting Yard. I will leave a link in the description down below. So thank you very, very much, Dib. And with that, I also, if you've watched one of my previous videos where I talk about upgrading the couplings on some of my wagons, I've also done exactly the same thing with these. What I did was I took the bodies off the chassis, which I think last time you saw them, they weren't on the chassis anyway, so that's not a problem. And I drilled out the old decoupling pin that was holding it in place using a 3mm drill. Literally just went through the little brass clamp that was on there, and it popped it straight out. And what I used was the Vectis Models 4mm locks for wagons. Now, these aren't designed for this, but it was something that I wanted to do because A, I didn't want all the big chunky Hornby D-lock coupling bits, but I also wanted to get some small NEMs on there. So these are NEM pockets, and these are, in my opinion, in terms of like the actual fit of the NEM on it, these are the best ones that I've purchased from him so far. So a massive shout out there. The problem that I have had with this is that I have now created some ridiculously large area in terms of the distance between the wagons now. So whilst the couplings look a lot better, there's now this massive gap in between here, which I believe is even bigger than the old D-lock couplings. So I'm going to speak to some of my 3D printer friends and see if there's something they can help me out with, similar to the Bachmann little shaft or cable piece that they do, which goes in between two coaches. I want a smaller version of that, basically, to go between the wagons that can go in an NEM pocket. So 3D printing friends out there, I may be in contact with you. I may have already spoken to you at this point. So I did the black stripes on the top. I added a little bit more yellow to the sides from a little bit of overspray, but actually I was happy with what happened. It basically just created an additional bit of dirt and grime on there. I did give a light dusting of black on these as well. And then I attached them to their chassis. I also can't remember if I said about the red line and the yellow dot on there, but it's not here, not there. So what I then did was I used a gloss varnish. So I used a Vallejo gloss varnish through the airbrush with some thinner and did a couple of coats of that, really thin coats over the top of these, so it basically created a nice surface for the transfers to go onto. And what I've done is I have obtained some Imperial Fist transfers from some of my Warhammer friends, mainly because I did yellow wagons. I thought it would be quite cool to sort of mesh two worlds together. So these are Imperial Fists, Dawn's Oil Wagons, which I quite like. I'm undecided whether I'm going to put more transfers on. I feel like some more would be cool, but then it's getting to the point where I'm having to put on so many transfers for these wagons, when really what I could leave them and they're simple enough. I sprayed the ladders that I got from David Bunter's yard, so they are done as well. All that's left to do on these is to do an oil wash and use the airbrush to sort of weather the tops with a little bit more grime and oil and stuff like that. Once that's done, I can put the ladders on and give them a nice coat of matte varnish, and they should be done, ready to go on the layout. But yeah, apart from the coupling situation, the actual couplings are fine. They work. They do what they're supposed to do. They couple together. But you may have a different opinion. That looks like a massive gap to me, which, I mean, it's not necessarily what I was after. Well, it is what I was after. All the dimensions were correct. I just stupidly put the massive NEM couplings on there. So yeah. So that is where I'm going to leave this video off. I'll come back to you with hopefully a shorter video going over the oil washes and stuff like that. If you'd like to see how I do transfers, please let me know in the comments down below and I can do a transfers video. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and in the next one hopefully they'll be all done and ready to roll around on the layout to add a little bit of something different and a little bit of a different colour to the layout as well. So yeah, thanks very much, and I'll see you guys next time. So I know I said that this would probably be a 3-part video, but actually I realised that what needed doing on these wagons was actually really small in comparison to do a whole new video for them. So I haven't done a time lapse of this particular segment, but what I am going to do is just sort of quickly talk you through it. So when I apply transfers, I give a gloss varnish to everything. Now, depending on what I'm varnishing, depends on what type of gloss varnish I'm using. For these particular type of like wagons where I don't mind them being dirty, grimy, and they're going to be quite grubby anyway, I actually use cheap gloss varnish. There's probably people out there who are absolutely busting a gut. I've had no problems using it on things like this that don't require vast amounts of detail. The gloss varnish does exactly what I need it to do, which is give me a smooth finish that I can use to apply the transfers. So once the gloss varnish is done, I then use Micro Set and Micro Sol. These things here. So Micro Set is the first one, Micro Sol's the second. Now what I do is various transfers get you to do it in different ways. I've always done it the same way, even if the transfer doesn't actually particularly say to do that. So for example, some transfers say to put it in a bowl of water, some say to use particular liquids to get it off the transfer. That's not what I do. I make sure I've got a sharp modelling knife, X-Acto knife or anything like that. I tend to keep a blade separate for transfers because you want that really nice clean cut on them. What I then do is I cut out the piece that I need, and then I get something as simple as, this is the lid from, sorry Wagon, this is the lid from a cotton bud set, and all I do is I get a bit of kitchen towel and I wet that and then put it in the lid. Once I've got all the transfers that I need, I put them on top of the kitchen towel, and what it does is they absorb the moisture through there without having to sit in a particular, like, bath, for example, and they're quite easy to obtain then. After a little bit of time, I use an old brush. I tend to, once again, I've got a brush that I use just for transfers. Now this isn't a particularly fine brush, it's actually an old Citadel wash brush that I snapped years ago and used some Black Nasty to hold it together. So what I do is I use the brush to make sure that it's coming away from the backing paper, and if it is, brilliant, I then use a small pair of tweezers to pick up the paper. These I think I got in a set from Primark for £1 with a couple of bits of tweezers. Not good to pluck your eyebrows, but they're good for using for transfers. I then line it up with the model, then use the brush to sort of put it on there. Before doing that, actually, I put micro set on the area that I'm going to do. And all this does is it makes it so that it prepares the area ready for the transfer to go on, and it sort of almost suctions it. I don't know the exact science behind it, but that's how I've always done it, and it's always worked for me. So yeah, I use the microset first. Once that's on there and the microset has evaporated, I then go over the top with the microsol. Now the reason you wait for it to evaporate is because the microsol is, in theory, it melts the transfer and it allows it to adhere to the surface better. Now these are very smooth surfaces to a certain degree already, but if you're applying it to, say, like the side of a wagon or something like that that had a lot of lines, what it will do is it will melt the transfer, not to the point where it breaks the lines and makes it all fuzzy, but it makes it so it goes in between all the recesses and things like that, and it's extremely useful to do. And what I do is I do that, leave it a couple of hours, come back, and I keep doing it until the sort of the outline of the transfer, the sort of, so you can see the film that's on it has disappeared. Sometimes it does it with 1 or 2 depending on the transfer. Sometimes it takes me several days of coming back, putting a blob on, then coming back and doing it, so forth. But each time I always try to make sure that it's always dry before doing it. You can then, if you wish, you can then do another layer of gloss varnish over the top, or matte varnish, to seal the transfers in. On my old Warhammer models, that's what I did used to do, but on the Wagons and anything I've done so far railway wise, I haven't needed to do that, because the amount of times I've had to use the microset and microsol on it to get that sort of film to disappear, usually they've pretty much adhered to the surface anyway. So I haven't done that with these. What I've then done is, I'm just trying to make sure I've got everything in here that I needed to get in for you. Yep, so the transfers are all done on there. So they're now all nice and they look like they were part of the vehicle. So now that they're on, I've gone over with a burnt umber spray with the airbrush, and I've done it specifically on a top-down way. I've just gone across the top of the wagon, and I've sprayed it so that, imagine my finger is the airbrush, I've sprayed it so it goes, and I make sure I do this particular motion. I turn the PSI right down whilst doing this. This little trick I got from the Bunter's Yard tutorial, so that gives you an idea of how much I've learnt from Dave. And yeah, so usually you would work from darkest to lightest when I'm using an airbrush, so that you get your nice highlights. Whenever I'm doing muck and grime and stuff like that with the airbrush, I tend to work from lightest to darkest on stuff like this. It's not something I've done with my trains, now that I've said that. But yeah, I started with a Vallejo burnt umber on the top, and I did that as much as I possibly needed to do. That would be effectively the most coverage I would be getting, and because all these wagons are all going to be different, obviously the lighting doesn't necessarily show it, but all of these wagons have a different level of how much is on there. The streaks don't always go down the same place. Now the reason I've done it along this top line is because when you put the gantries on top, it looks as though all the rust and stuff that's coming off it has come off there. and also because you've got the gantries up there, it's difficult to get to certain areas, so hopefully it adds that next level of detail. There's some areas like on this one here where I haven't necessarily attacked the areas where the transfers are, which is fine, that'll be okay. And then there's ones like this one where I've done a very light spray with the burnt umber, and that's to make sure that you've just got differences on there. It's also worth mentioning that, where is it? There's one of these things is not like the other. This wagon here, the black stripes at the wrong end. I don't know how I managed it, but whilst I was masking off, I masked off this one, and the black stripes at the wrong end. All the other ones are at the opposite end of the ladder. This one's not. Sorry. For those with OCD out there, I really, really apologise. So after I did the burnt umber, I added some black to the burnt umber, to the point where it's pretty much almost black, but it still has that tinge to it, and it helps sort of blend the two colours together when you're airbrushing. And the black I've sort of used this sort of section here. Let's see if I can get this bit where the wagon meets the body. When I was doing the colours and stuff, I actually tended to, for some reason, get all the light parts there. So what I've done is I've gone around the bottom with that burnt umber black, just to sort of make it so all the recesses are going to have all that gunge and grime and stuff in there as well. Yeah, and the black, you don't want to do as much as you're doing of the burnt umber on there, but in some situations you're going to have more of the black than the others. So for example, this one here, I did a lot of black at the top on that one, and on the ends, whereas this one over here, there's none? Did I do any? Yes, I think I did some. Now questioning myself. Yes, I did do black on this one. So this one, yeah, there you go, proves my point. So this one's got very little black on it, whereas some of them have got a lot of black on there. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to attach the gantries and stuff like that. I can then additionally weather them as I see fit. So here we are. I've attached the walkways and the ladders on there. I've weathered them a little. There's possibly a chance I'm going to go back and do some more weathering to these, but this project was sort of starting to drag on a little bit. So I've decided to stop it for now, and I'm going to come back possibly at a later date and maybe have some weathering powders and some oils to them. But I'm happy with how they are. They're definitely a lot better than the really shiny Hornby Railroad wagons that they look like when I started this project. The things that I am going to do, so I haven't glued the ladders and the walkways on because I want to maybe address those at a later time. But I'm really happy with them. They look uniform, and apart from the one that's the wrong way round, they're really nice. It's a nine wagon rake. The first one's hooked up with a KD coupler, and then the last one has no coupler on it. That's something that might change later down the line, but for now I'm happy with it. They go around nicely, and it'll be a nice little thing to have running around the layout as well. So yeah, that's it for this project. A couple of non-Heresy people or non-Warhammer people have asked me what the joke about the symbol is, and I keep calling them Dawn's Promethean wagons. So in the game I played called the Horus Heresy, there's basically 18 different brothers, and those 18 different brothers are all leaders of different armies, and eventually what happens is half of them decide to rebel and fight against the other half, and one of them is just called Dawn, and he's got a yellow army called the Imperial Fists, which is the symbol that you see on there, and their army colour's yellow. That's the short version of it. There's a massive intricate backstory to it. However, to accompany these wonderful wagons, I am custom painting a Class 50 to go with them. Now, I won't spoil too much for you, but it's definitely going to be a Legion themed Class 50, and I think it will be quite funny from my point of view. But yeah, it's just a little nod to my roots, my backgrounds, and the fact that I do still really love the story of the Heresy, and I just thought this would be something quite nice to sort of add into the layout. So yeah, if you've liked this series of videos, please leave a comment down below. Let me know if there's something that you want to see in the future. Thanks very much for sticking around to the end. I'm going to start throwing in things at the end and asking you to comment down below of what your favourite is. And today I'm going to ask what your favourite crisp is. Thanks very much. Have a good day. That's all for now.